This is David Goodman's Reality and Truth Show. My name is Vanita Lambert. I am the host of this show, and I have my monthly co-host with me, Dr. Sunji Phillips. She is an organizational psychologist, and she's here with us once a month to help us with information regarding parent and training, employee training, and a host of other things. She also has a webinar on Mondays and Wednesdays. It's at BrysonAssociates.com. And on Mondays, it is in English. And then Wednesdays is in Spanish, and it comes on at what time again? 10 o'clock?
From 10 to 11:30.
Why can't I remember that? 10 to 11:30. So thank you for that information, and welcome to the show
Thank
again.
you. I am so glad to be here, as always. As always.
It's always a pleasure to have you here.
So, today, we've been talking about human growth and development now for the last few months. And it's, we're still kind of getting into it because, it's so much that we can say about the child, the lifespan, the milestones. So we're going to, I guess, jump right into that.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Although my favorite part is where my granddaughter is, but we could jump. And that was, we did the infant, and then we did the toddler. So now we're in late childhood.
Yes.
6 to 12.
6 to 12-year-old, that age. And I want to say that age, right when you get up to that 12, where you're not quite sure about if those kids are yours or not, and you're kind of like, okay, where did my sweet little darling child go?
Yeah, especially the girls,
Absolutely. The boys tend to mature a little bit later on, and then when they're around the ages of 17 or 18, about 16, 17, or 18, you're like, where did my baby boy go? Because now they're making decisions and they're finding mates. But, we'll talk about that a little later on. But today, we're going to talk about 6-year-olds to 12-year-olds, what you should expect, what they are like, and just how to manage them at that age.
That's what you really want to know, how to manage them.
So when they're closer to 6 years old, they are, they're still exploring, they're learning to be a little bit independent, and they are, what do I want to say about 6 to 8 years old? They know enough to know what they know. And so what I mean by that is...
I was going to say, what does that mean? I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know.
Right. So at that age, they know enough to know that I know stuff. Mm-hmm. I know that this bottle is halfway filled with water. I know that your nail color is pink. They know enough to kind of challenge you with what they know. So you'll say to them, you'll say to them, baby, put your toys away so that we can go eat. Mommy, I'm still playing with this doll.
Oh, yeah.
Or all of my toys are away. It's just this doll. So now they begin to kind of know things. And when I say know things, they have a knowledge base that they're comfortable with. And so at this point, they know that they understand certain aspects of life. They understand that you want them to put away their toys before they come to breakfast. They know they have to brush their teeth as soon as they get in, before they get out. Okay, let me stop. They know that they have to brush their teeth before they go to bed, as soon as they get out. So they begin to know certain things about routines and about expectations. And so with knowing these things, they can at sometimes, put in a little bit of a challenge if you're not careful.
Right, because they know what they know, but they also know what they want. And it might not always be in agreement with what the parent wants them to do, and that's where the challenge comes in. I remember that. And they're kind of developing their little independence, like I know it's time to eat, but can my doll come with me, or I'm not done, or that's an interesting age.
Yeah, it is.
I'm remembering now that age.
Yeah, and I think it's a really cute age. I really like that age, especially like the 8 to 10-year-olds, because now they have their own style of dressing. They know what what they want to wear. They know what kind of shoes they like, and don't get me wrong, I've seen it as young as one. I've seen where you put on a 1-year-old shoes and she go and take those off and put on the other pair that she likes. So some kids have their personality from birth, but a lot around this age, they now know what music they like, who they like as their friends, and they even understand why they don't like people as their friends. So when they're very young, maybe 1 years old, 2 years old, 3 years old, you'll see them coming together and playing with certain people, and they can't express why they don't want to be with somebody. But by the time they get to that age, 6, 8, around 10 years old, they're able to say, I don't want to play with her because she's mean, or because she doesn't let me do what I want to do, or like they know stuff by the time they get that age.
It's
right?
Becoming clear now. That is so true.
Yeah, they begin to know, and so mentally they begin to grow amazingly because they're in school. And so I'm trying to think, and it's been a minute since I've been in elementary, but I would think like around the age of 8 and 10, they've gone through addition and subtraction, and they're going into multiplication and, different types of math. Reading, writing, math is now crucial, and a lot of them are proving themselves through their achievement in school. So this becomes a little bit of a foundation that, wow, these are the things that I know, and I can show people how well I know these things through my academic progress. And so school for some becomes very, very important. And for others who may struggle, it becomes a point of stress. So we have to know, I want to say it's very crucial at this age that if your child is struggling with school, or at any age, but especially at this age, because at this age they're building up their confidence about what they know. So we want them to be comfortable about knowing academics. So at this age, if you see that your child is struggling in school, make it a little bit more fun. Everyone doesn't learn the same. Myself, I am a visual person. You can tell me how to do something a dozen times until I see it. Once you show it to me the first time,
then you get it.
I got it. You can tell me somebody's name a dozen times, and you'll be like, oh my God, Sonji, we've been with her, we go out every Saturday with her, and I'm like, oh, geez, sorry. But as soon as they pass that ID back and I see her name on it,
that's it.
I got it.
So should we rely on teachers to let us know that they're struggling? Or I guess that's one way. Another way would be check their homework and see what's going on. You know what? I just thought of a story that is that brings me back to when my son Jonathan, he was in the 3rd grade, so he's at 8 years old. And Jonathan is the one that he's under that little autistic umbrella of Asperger's syndrome, very, very mild, and always quiet in school and this and that and the other. He was in the 3rd grade, and I guess at that time they did like their classwork on one side of the paper, and then on the other side they would bring home for homework. So the teacher would go over everything with them, and then they would do the rest, the other side for the homework. And so I had fallen behind in checking everything because, a mother with 2 kids working full time, I just fell behind.
Absolutely.
So finally I got to it, and about 2 weeks worth of homework, shame on me, but I did get to it. I noticed that all of his homework was wrong. And I was like, whoa, what is going on? I called a meeting with the teacher. Me and my husband went down, and we had a meeting with her, and I was like, now this is what you go over in class. And then they do the homework, and you check the homework. You see that it's wrong. His has been wrong, all these days, 10 days in a row or whatever. Why isn't he getting it? And she said to me, and this is sometimes in public school, you get a mix of really good, really caring, somebody on the verge of retiring, whatever. I explained it, and he must have turned away. My husband got up and left, and he's the good one. I stayed, and so if it was like my oldest son, baby Joe, I'd have been like, okay, that's cool. But not this one. He's pays attention and everything. And so we had a powwow. I was like, you have got to do better. And then, long story short, he suffered in the 3rd grade because she didn't really pay attention. She didn't do a great job. But I did notice that he was falling behind. Then when he went to the 4th grade, he got Miss Fritz, who was a very strict teacher. I had to get a tutor just to get him through the 4th grade.
Yeah.
But
I've
I
heard
did
4th grade
recognize
is the
that.
hardest.
Yeah, but she was really good. And if you don't have a good 3rd grade teacher, he was way behind, way behind. We just had to suffer through her. She was about to retire and everything. So sometimes that's what you get in a public school. Public school, you're going to get a mix.
Right.
So as long as I was on top of it and I recognized it, but it was a situation that was just out of my control while he was in school. I mean, she did a little bit better, but when you're in a classroom with a young child like that and a parent complains, they can take it out on the child. And in so many ways, like even just by ignoring them or a certain look or certain things like that. And I just didn't want to take it any further, so we suffered. But I knew something was wrong.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents just suffer through because, you know, you're right.
You don't want to make it hard for your kid 8 hours a day. So you just suck it up and pray for something better.
Yeah, and I can remember telling my kids, more likely my daughter, you know, when she would tell me, oh, I have a terrible teacher, it's nothing you're going to do about that teacher. You're only going to be with her for 10 months.
But listen to them because they know. Like you said, they know stuff.
Get through it. Get through it. But absolutely, and I have heard that the 4th grade and the 7th grade are the hardest grades, and I'm not quite sure, I don't remember.
Why?
I think I knew once upon a time, but I think it was the courses. I think it's like because they're introduced to arithmetic and maybe physics, or it's whatever it is, that intensity of courses, new courses, because up to that point, you know, it's adding, and then we learn how to add with double digits, and then we learn how to subtract, you know, so like it's a build up, and then when you get to 4th grade, you get introduced to different materials.
Yeah.
And 7th grade is the same.
Yeah, but this kid was, you know, he's really smart. He has little Asperger's syndrome. He was using big words when he was like 7, and you know, so I think he's like a sponge at that time. If you teach him the right way, he gets it. But, you know, maybe 3rd grade could have been a review of grades 1 and 2. I don't know. I'm not a teacher, and I commend teachers. I'm not taking anything away from teachers, whether it's public school, private school, whatever. It's a job that I can't do. Put it like that.
Absolutely.
And I really commend and appreciate them. But this one particular situation, you know, it really affected my son adversely, and he had to suffer for really 2 years, 3rd and 4th. So. But pay attention to your kids. Pay attention to what they're saying, what they're feeling, especially in school, because like Dr. Sanji said, they know stuff.
And the other thing is, when the kids are in school, we have to make sure that we kind of follow through, and it's exactly what you said. We have, as parents, we have to follow through with what they're doing and find their strengths and their weaknesses, because every kid doesn't learn the same.
Right.
And I know today, kids, their brains work like you said, like sponges, but they're on speed. They're on speed. They're on speed. And so, and that's what our kids do now with the games. And you see them, and they're playing the games, and they got 3 screens in front of them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're paying attention to everything, and they've got everything, you know, there.
Right.
And so...
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to ask you, and I think it's a good question for the audience, because I got upset about that whole situation. How should I have handled that situation, or how many different ways could I have handled it professionally, or, you know, because I got mad and anybody else would. So if you're in a situation, you know, what are some of the things that we can do?
Some of the things that I would recommend is pull that teacher in as part of your child's circle of support, and then empower them. Ask them, what can I do? How do you see him growing? What errors is he making? What can we do more of at home? Because the one thing that I find with teachers is when they see that the child comes from a home that really cares and is really supportive, they change the way that they look at that child. And they change the way that they deal with that child. And so that's one of the things that I have found sort of across the board. Unfortunately, sometimes when our kids are not able to keep up, then we may, then the teachers may look and say,
I can't, hold everybody back or
Right.
whatever. And then there's, extenuating circumstances, such as single parents working maybe a full-time job that can't be there.
Right.
We need to be there sometimes. Now we can be there electronically,
Right.
We could, send reminders on the phones, but a lot of times, parents just couldn't get there or could not be there or didn't even have a car to get there.
Right.
And so their child was dependent on another parent being there. And I want to say I was one of those parents. I was on the school board, the PTA. I was
Yeah.
involved in
Get involved.
everything.
Absolutely
If you
get
can
involved.
get involved, if you have a holiday or any PTO and
Visit.
there's a meeting, you want to do a face-to-face and always go to the report card meetings or whatever they call them.
Right. You want to be visible
Yeah.
in your child's school because you want them to know who you are and you want them to know that you are active in that child's life.
Exactly.
I have a similar story with my son. He had always been in Catholic school, in private school, and then we took him out and we put him into public school. Well, that boy
Culture
saw,
shock.
oh yes, he saw that he was not walking around with this little tie on his neck and with this straight ladder and all of this discipline, and he just lost his mind. So,
What do you mean? Lost his mind.
oh my goodness, he was doing everything that he know he has no business doing. Everything, acting up in the classes and talking and I think at some point the school, and this was in junior high school, I think they sort of gave up on him. They were just like, this is another statistical kid here. It's what are we going to do with him? And then one day his dean. He was home from school that day, and the dean said he wanted to make sure that he was able to do his homework. So he brought the homework to the home, a little surprise visit, and brought the homework to the home. And so when he came in and he saw that my son actually lived in a home, a loving home, with parents that care and that are there and supportive, it immediately changed the way that they dealt with my son.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is. Like they have to see something before they can give you what they should have given you. Like
Right.
the ultimate respect, whether your child is rich, poor, in a good home, medium home, or bad home. Anyway, that's what they should be doing.
Yeah, at
You
that
know.
point, even the way that they spoke about him changed, and they were like, oh, he's just acting up. You know how boys are, but we're going to get a hold of him. We're going to take a hold of him. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And that whole rapport changed, and we were able to get my son under control because they then understood after that home visit that, my son was not set upon to be, another statistic or, that he was just being a bad kid, and he needed to stop it. And I agree that every child should be treated in that way. Assumptions shouldn't be made regarding kids because any child can pull themselves out of any environment. I
Exactly.
am not a product of my environment. I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, and I am definitely not what people would assume a mother, a single mother with 3 daughters would produce. None of me and my sisters. But, it is what it is. Somebody took a chance on us. Somebody prayed for us. Somebody kept us in mind, and somebody kept us in line. And here we
put
are.
in the work.
That's it.
To
That's
become
it.
a psychologist. You are a
That's it.
doctor.
That's it.
And everything else. That's wonderful.
That's it.
So, I do understand that. And it is good. And so, having said that, okay, just getting back to the story that you just told, it's important to make that visual contact, to sit there and look at the teacher and look in their eyes and say, listen, tell them if you can't get to school, I work a full time, I don't have a job, I love my son, I want them to succeed, and I'm counting on you, or whatever you need to say.
Absolutely. Make that contact. And the other thing is know your child. Know how they learn, because with my child, he was busy even from, this age group before he got into junior high school. He was busy. And so I had to come into his kindergarten class. I had to come into his first grade class. I had to come into his second grade class and teach them how to deal with my child. because traditionally schools want you to come in and sit down at a table and sit there for an hour, or in some cases, if they're not changing classes yet, to sit for several hours and look on a board and document stuff and read a book. My son was not capable of doing that.
Lots of children aren't.
Yeah, his energy level would not allow that. So I had to speak to the teacher when we first came in, and when he was in kindergarten, we used to have a what do you call these things? A clicket, a fidget. And I would allow him to bring like a little Spider-Man or something into the classroom, and he would keep it under the desk, and he would play with that while he's doing his work. Well, he would always be the first one to finish his work. He was always the first one to complete whatever, he was doing. And it was because he had that
little G.I. Joe thing. I know what you're talking about, little toys.
Yeah, just that little toy, but it acted as a, and I want to say a distractor. That's the word I'm looking for. It acted as a distractor. So while playing with that, he was able to kind of focus on what he was doing. But that was the only way that he could focus. If he did not have that, he didn't have good days at school. His kindergarten teacher, Miss Gordon, I love Miss Gordon, I tell you. And so she would allow him to have it, and she would always say to me, remember, he got to keep that in his pocket because all the kids will want to bring.
Exactly.
And I would remind him, and he would tell me, okay, ma, and so we had to do that going up the grades. And I remember when he went into second grade, the second grade teacher came, and of course she didn't know who I was. She didn't know what I did. So
Not
she
yet.
comes and she tells me, I try to tell her that and she's absolutely, oh no, we don't do that here. And so of course I'm not going to tell, well, the last 2 years he's been doing it. But she said, no, absolutely not. We can't bring a fidget or clicker. We can't bring any of these things into the classroom. They have to learn to sit and just do their work. And so he struggled a little bit in the second grade. And at some point she approached me and she said, well, I think he has something. She said, I think he has ADHD, and we may want to. We may want to make recommendations for medications, and I'm just looking at her and I'm thinking to myself,
she's a teacher, not a doctor, first of all.
Right, and I had to now ask her the questions that I asked everyone at that time I was doing testing for these, specific diagnoses. So I had to run in my head all of the questions off of there. So is he unable to focus for long periods of time on the work that he's doing? Well, no, he can do that. Is he unable to complete the task that he's getting? Well, no, he can complete them, but okay. And so once I just kind of rolled down, I said, okay, well, those are all the qualifiers for, ADHD, and apparently he has none. And then I had to let her know, you're walking a dangerous rope here by telling parents that their children may have ADHD.
I know.
That's dangerous.
That's crossing a line.
Because parents that don't know may believe you and may take your role as a teacher as being somebody that's knowledgeable about these things. And what about if they go and get their kids on medication based on what you're saying, and she's like, oh, well, I didn't know, I didn't mean any harm. But I'm like, okay, but, be careful.
Be careful. So if any teacher recommend that, get a second opinion.
Absolutely.
Not
get
just
a second opinion.
Medication is the last resort ever. I mean, when my son was diagnosed, we just weren't going to do any medication until we exhausted every other possibility, because they're still so young, their brain is developing, and then they're taking prescription medication, and we all know where that's going.
Right.
So
I would definitely say exactly what you said, to try other things. The thing that, like I said, that worked for my son was having a little Spider-Man, and then when he got older, the teachers above the third grade allowed him to have a little clicking, and it's just, one of those little boxes that has little fidget things, and he was able to use that underneath his desk. Another teacher would allow him the opportunity to stand up from his seat and just walk around the class, or to go to the bathroom. It was like a thing that they would do to get him up and exhausting some of the energy. So work with your teacher to see what works for your child, because every child is not capable of sitting for hours on hours to do work, but it doesn't enable their ability to do the work correctly. So it's just about working with each child. I remember when my son was younger, I did want to start a school for kids like my child, which I considered to be gifted, because he had the ability to score at the highest, and he knew the work and was able to complete it, and just a very bright kid. But the only thing they saw was the fact that he wasn't able to sit still, or he would, I guess, move about in his seat, or he would, like that's all that they saw.
Start fidgeting, yeah.
And so, it's like, how do you don't want to take kids that are, that have this genius about them and then to discourage them. Because that's what would have happened had I allowed them to put my son on medication or put him in classes that were slower or things like that. And it was, for me, it was like a zero tolerance. I'm not going to allow that. And so, this is one of the things that we have to look at with our children, especially at that age, because they learn differently. Everyone doesn't learn in that box. So we as parents have to sometimes help the teachers to think outside of the box.
And to know what type of child you have, like you did. That's interesting.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that, because that's good information. Instead of just getting mad because something went wrong for 2 weeks.
Don't war with the teacher.
Don't. That could be such a bad idea. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
No problem. Okay. I would really like the opportunity to teach kids in developmental disabilities and mental health diagnosis. I think that's a course that teachers need refreshers on. And I know that they have to update, have so many teaching credits each year, but I think that's just really pertinent that they continue to take on those courses, because maybe at some point we can get classes to set them up exactly how I said, so that, this is an active class, and that's what we call it. The kids are not special needs or anything like that, but this is a class where we have music playing, they're able to have their fidgets, they get their work done, and they're able to burn out that movement energy that they need.
Yeah, and have a constructive agenda for the child. So if you're in a class as a teacher, and I'm sure they do this, for 8 hours, you can't expect them to sit for 6 and do something. You got to break it up.
Right.
I can't sit for that long.
Right, and that's exactly what I think today. Do I have like adult onset ADHD? Because I'm in meetings and I'm like,
my attention span is like that big.
Yeah. After the first 90 minutes, and everybody. But we expect kids to sit for 8 straight hours, and if they can't, then they have a disability or and
Yep, and you gotta, let them interact with you. Ask questions, find out what they're about. I know, and I know we don't have that much time left. I think we have, 1 or 2 minutes? 1 minute, okay. It's all yours. We'll pick up on this next time. I love the stories you tell, because everybody relates to stories.
Oh, okay, great. So I just want to thank you all for coming in today. I want to thank you, as always, for having me on. And I look forward for us continuing this discussion. I think we're going to continue late childhood, because we want to discuss that age into puberty. They're not quite adults, not still children. So I look forward to seeing you next month.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you guys for joining us. This is the David Goodman Reality and Truth Show, and we're on your side.